Yo, what's up, everyone? This is Terry with College Football Stop. Excited to bring you guys another show today. It's November 20th. Got Thanksgiving coming up. It's hate week, the game week. This is what, we wait all year for. As a college football fan, as an Ohio State fan, Michigan fan, this is what you look forward to all year, man. So, I don't know. I'm kind of in the thankful mood. I'm excited for this. This weekend is going to be crazy. I think it's going to be one of the most hostile games, and I don't know, man. Like, it could be a great game. Somebody could get blown out. We'll see. I'm super excited about it. So, anyway, I'm going to be doing a lot of content this week, obviously focused around the game coming up. Today, I want to talk about the Ohio State offense and the Michigan offense. And I'm going to go down position by position, and I want to kind of compare them and see who has the real advantage. Obviously, the numbers may have Michigan as scoring more points than Ohio State, but the level of competition has not been the same this entire year. And, honestly, I think Ohio State just has better players. So we'll see. I'm going to go, like I said, position by position. Um, the question for you guys in the chat is going to be who has the best running back. Should I say room? No, who has the best running back in this game? That's my question for the chat today. Let me know. I'll get into that as I get to the running back position, but for now, let me know what you guys think. All right, so I want to start obviously at the top. We're starting with the quarterback. You got J.J. McCarthy, Heisman contender J.J. McCarthy. You got Kyle McCord, the one who honestly our fan base has been really hard on and kind of just look at him as a big step back from what we're used to seeing at that position from Ryan Day. So we'll see. Like I said, J.J. McCarthy is someone who all this year has been like super efficient. Everybody said it looks like he's taken the next step. It's looking like he's ready to be an NFL quarterback. People were mocking him as like a top 10 pick in the draft, all that good stuff. But since those things have happened, the Connor Stallion stuff came out, and Michigan's losing coaches. Now Jim Harbaugh's not on the sideline. And honestly, the last two games that Michigan played against Penn State and against Maryland, J.J. McCarthy did not look like that level of quarterback. Even the Penn State game, if you look back at that game, I think he was like 7 for 8 passing, right? Obviously, everyone knows they won that game by running the ball over and over again, regardless of whether Penn State was stopping it or not. They were not going to change up the plan. Some of that probably has to do with, now they're who they have running their team. They have head coach Sherrone Moore, who's also the offensive line coach. And then their offensive coordinator is, as of right now, the other person involved with the offense is Mike Hart, who's the running back. So, I mean, obviously there's something to that. But if you look at the way that J.J. McCarthy specifically played in these past two games where, honestly, like there's no Stallions effect. There's no, you're finally playing against a decent team, not even a great team in Maryland. And J.J. McCarthy looked really pedestrian. I mean, he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass, I think, since the Michigan State game, which was, 4 games ago. And that was like the week where the whole Connor Stallion stuff came out. I don't know, man. When I was watching Michigan throughout the year, I didn't really see like the major level up. Like I think J.J. McCarthy last year was able to make some really good throws, but then would also be way off on a lot of other easy throws. I feel like it's the same person that you see this year, and I don't know, man. I just don't really see a difference. Now, when we flip that over to the Ohio State side and we look at Kyle McCord, Kyle's been kind of consistently average all year, in my opinion. Every game he seems to have like a start the game off pretty good, look not great at all for like the after the first drive into halftime, and then the second half is a little bit better. But I honestly don't I don't even attribute that to Kyle. I don't think that in the second half of these games that Kyle is just changing up something that he's doing. I think that Ryan Day is just getting more in his bag and getting people open, and everybody else on the team just kind of locks in. And obviously Kyle makes some throws there, but he's never been the quarterback this entire year, and this includes the Michigan State game because when I went back and watched that game, watched the all 22 of it. Kyle was not phenomenal in that game either. He made a couple good throws that he hadn't made throughout the year, but he was making a lot of misreads and whatnot. So anyway, we're comparing these two, JJ McCarthy and Kyle McCord. Who would you guys take? Let me know in the chat. If you could pick right now, who would you take as your quarterback to go into this game? Because honestly, I think it's kind of a toss-up. Like, I don't know. I don't really think that I just don't think that either one of them really stand out to me. I think maybe I would probably take JJ McCarthy because of his athleticism, but at the same time, I think that if it comes down to it and it's late in the game and you need your quarterback to throw the ball, let's say it's like a final drive in the game with a minute left and you need your quarterback to throw the ball, I'm taking Kyle McCord for that situation. I think he's got like that ice in his veins mentality, and he's just going to let it rip in those situations. So I don't know. I want to say JJ because of athleticism, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with Kyle because this is a game that I think could come down to the wire. It could come down to, like I said, a last drive. And I would not want JJ McCarthy out there with 45 seconds left having to drive the field. I just think that there's no way that would work for Michigan at all. And I mean, if you look back to, I think the only time that they had a situation like that, which I think was against TCU last year, and it didn't go well for them. They got stopped. So, all right, I wrote that one down as a tie. Like I said, I just wanted to give the reasons why I would take each one of them, but I have the quarterback as a tie. Moving on to the running back. This was the question that I asked everybody in the chat, right? I have Evan here said that TreVeyon Henderson is the only correct answer when to the question of who's the best running back between either team. And I mean, I agree with you on that. I was doing some digging this morning, looking at some TreVeyon Henderson stats. So in games where TreVeyon Henderson has had at least 14 carries this year, that's 4 games, and he averaged 7.4 yards per carry, 6.8, 5.8, and 9.7. So if you give TreVeyon Henderson the ball, he's going to get his yards per carry in. And in those games, he had long carries of 61, 33, 27, and 75. Now, you would think like those sound like numbers that someone's doing against a really bad defense, right? But if you look at the teams that TreVeyon Henderson got those carries against, it was Notre Dame, it was Wisconsin, it was Rutgers, it was Minnesota. Those are not the worst defenses that Ohio State played against this year. Honestly, if you don't count Minnesota, because they're just really bad. But if you look at the other, that's probably 3 of the best defenses Ohio State's played. Outside of Penn State, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and Rutgers are the best 3 defenses Ohio State's won against this year. So, I don't know, man. Trey is just a freak, and I think that he's finally hitting like his true form, basically where all his development is kind of paying off, and he's been kind of developing in the background because TreVeyon Henderson said when he was hurt last year, the biggest problem was not what he was doing on game day. He said the biggest problem was that his foot was so hurt that he couldn't practice. He said he was practicing 1 day a week. So I don't know. I believe that, and he's the best running back in this game, in my opinion. Obviously, Michigan has Blake Corum. Blake Corum has 888 yards, 4.9 a carry, 20 touchdowns. And I think out of his 20 touchdowns, only one of them is from more than 5 yards out, that's kind of a crazy stat. I mean, obviously they have Donovan Edwards that they mix in there and get some reps to. Donovan is that back that can hit a home run if you let him get out in open space. So obviously you have to watch out for that. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield too, so you got to watch out for that. But I mean, even looking at like catching the ball out of the backfield, you look at Donovan Edwards. He has 24 catches this year for 225 yards and 0 touchdowns. But as I was saying before, TreVeyon Henderson is the best back TreVeyon Henderson is the best back between either team. If you're looking at Trey, he has 16 catches on the year, 210 yards, and 0 touchdowns, averaging 13.1 yards per catch. So honestly, you could make the point that TreVeyon Henderson's better at running the ball than Blake Corum and better at receiving, or at least as good at receiving the ball as Donovan Edwards is. I mean, in turn, when I say that, I'm talking about just overall effectiveness. If you're a Michigan fan watching this, I know you're screaming at me saying that dude, Donovan Edwards is better than Travion Henderson catching the ball, and I do agree with that. He's kind of got some of that like wide receiver H back type of hands and receiving skills. So I mean, again, Donovan is a better receiver, but ultimately, does it matter if you're a running back and you run a route and high point a ball, or does it matter if you catch one out of the backfield and take it for 50 yards? Like it really doesn't. Either way, it's a receiving threat, and it's something that's very hard for the defense to factor for and to account for. So I don't know, man. I think Travion Henderson's probably a good combination of Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, and he's better than both of them. So Ohio State gets the nod on that part. And then going on to the tight ends. So this is one that I thought was an interesting topic because I made a comment to a Michigan fan yesterday that Ohio State has the best tight end in this game too. And his response as a fan was like, we have two tight ends better than Cade Stover. So I figured let's look at some of the stats for that too. Looking at Cade Stover, he actually missed a few games, and I don't know if Michigan's players have. So I'm not going to pretend to know that. But if they did, whatever. If you're a Michigan fan, then you know. But Cade Stover has 38 catches this year, 534 yards, 14.1 yards per catch, and 5 touchdowns. And then looking at Michigan's best tight end in terms of receiving, their top tight end is Colston Loveland. 32 catches, 462 yards, 14.4 yards per catch, and 4 TDs. So, I mean, I don't know. Cade Stover is statistically better than Colston Loveland. And Michigan does have another one, too, that they like to mix in, which is A.J. Barner. I've actually seen this guy make a couple really good plays. So overall, as a room, I would probably say Michigan's tight ends are better. But if I'm looking at this one game, I'm giving this to Ohio State because I think that Cade Stover is a mismatch nightmare for Michigan. And I don't really think that either one of these tight ends are going to be mismatch nightmares for Ohio State because Ohio State has guys in their secondary that will match up well with these guys. So you're looking at a guy like Sonny Styles. You're looking at a guy like, you're looking at a guy like Josh Proctor. Those are two big safeties, and they both will match up well with Michigan's tight ends. So I'm going to give the nod to Ohio State on that just because, again, I think that Cade Stover will have a bigger impact on this game in terms of, and he's the best tight end out of the group, in my opinion. All right, and then moving on to the wide receivers, and then we'll talk about the O-line after this. So the wide receivers is the obvious one, right? Ohio State has one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country, and Michigan is not known for having great wide receivers. It's just not something that they've ever had. Now, Roman Wilson has kind of been a step up from what they're used to over there, but even he hasn't been very productive. I mean, since Connor Stallions has been gone, again, I don't know how much that has an impact on it, but I know that if you're calling the right play, it's much easier for that wide receiver to get open. And Roman Wilson got hurt against Maryland, I think like very early in the game and didn't come back. And I think it was just precautionary. I think they kind of expected to win that game and just sat him out for the rest of the game, which ended up being a dogfight if you watched it. But one of the stats that I found that was very interesting about the wide receivers is that Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson have 612 yards and 470 yards between the two. Currently Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting at 1,093 yards. So I did the math on that, and basically what I found out is that Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson, Michigan's top two wide receivers, have combined this year for 11 less yards than Marvin Harrison Jr. So, and then obviously when you look through the rest of the Ohio State team, you have guys like Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Cade Stover, who are also like really big receiving threats. Cade Stover obviously not a receiver, but you look at Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Julian Fleming, and Xavier Johnson is the guy who gets involved a lot. So I think it's kind of obvious the Ohio State room is going to get the nod in this situation, and I honestly don't think it's particularly close. I know that Michigan has one of the better secondaries in college football, but so does Ohio State, and I think that their wide receivers are going to kind of be put on lockdown against Ohio State, and I just think that Ohio State has wide receivers that are good enough to make plays on Michigan's secondary. And I'm not sure that Michigan has that this year. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the offensive line. So this one is just, I don't know. This is probably the hardest one for me to judge because a lot of people have down talked and talked a lot of trash about Ohio State's offensive line. But honestly, they've been playing really well. And I think since they've mixed up their run scheme and made it to where teams can't just key on what they're doing and just kind of get a head start on the offensive line, I think they've been playing phenomenal. There have been some pass rush issues, but if you're looking at both of these offensive lines, I think that both of them have had their pass rush issues. Excuse me. And you look back to the Penn State game for Michigan, and they were not able to throw the ball at all because their offensive line was getting dominated in terms of their pass rush. And Ohio State, excuse me, one second. Ohio State did go against that same offensive line, and they were able to throw the ball. Obviously, Kyle did get hit a few times, but Ohio State's offensive line, I think, is a little bit better than Michigan's in pass pro. And I think that Michigan's O-line is probably a little bit better than Ohio State's in running and run plays. And I don't know, man. I think they're just built for that. They have like those bigger body guys who are probably able to move guys off the ball a little bit better. Ohio State has some of the a little more, I would say, more athletic type of offensive linemen. And I think that works out for what Ohio State's trying to do. And I think that's probably also why now that Ohio State switched to some of the gap scheme instead of just running zone all the time, I think that has benefited Ohio State's offensive line because if you can let those guys kind of pull around and get and beat the defensive either linebacker or the D lineman to the spot, I think that bodes well for them because they're just better athletes than most offensive linemen, especially if you're one of those teams that has kind of grind it down mentality how Michigan does. So and I'm not going to give this nod to either team because, like I said, I think Michigan's offensive line is kind of they're kind of food when it comes to pass blocking. I think Ohio State has a chance to really get some pressure on J.J. McCarthy this weekend. And Ohio State's O-line is not really like that. They're more like they'll let you get at the quarterback once or twice a game probably. And honestly, some of that has to do with Kyle McCord just being completely unaware of what's going on around him. But Michigan's O-line, like I said, a little bit better in the run. And they're not going to typically allow a negative play or a stop for 0 yards. And Ohio State's offensive line does have a tendency to do that occasionally, but they're also going to, spring some big plays with what they're doing. So I'm going to call that a wash. Right now, currently for the offenses, I have a tie at quarterback. OSU, I give the running back lean because TreVeyon Henderson, I think, is the best running back. And honestly, probably one of the best football players on the field that day will be TreVeyon Henderson. Maybe top 3, maybe top 4, or something like that. So moving on to the tight ends, I gave Ohio State the nod again, like I said, because I think Cade Stover is the best player on the field in terms of tight ends. Now, Michigan does have 2 of them. Their tight ends could end up having a bigger impact on the game. But I don't think so because in big games like this where teams tend to focus in on Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka, Kyle McCord and Cade Stover have a really good connection. They will dink and dunk the ball down the field with those 2 and running the ball. They're not afraid to do that. The obvious one, like I said, was the Ohio State wide receiver room. Gets the nod there. And then the O-line I have as a tie. So to answer the overall question of the topic of the day, which team has a better offense? I personally think Ohio State's offense is a lot better than Michigan's. I think they have Ryan Day as a play caller who is a major level up from anyone that's on Michigan's staff. That's one of the biggest things, and I've always said this, talking about the Michigan cheating thing. Basically, what they did is they said, okay, you have better players. Ohio State typically has better players. That's how it's worked out. They're like, okay, you have typically had the better players. We're going to do this to make sure that you cannot outcoach us at this point. We're guaranteeing that we outcoach you. So let's see if your players can make up for you automatically being outcoached. And, when basically that comes down to them knowing the signs and then making the perfect call. So Ryan Day had no chance to make adjustments or anything like that because as soon as you adjust, they already know what you're doing. But again, I think that Ohio State does have the better coaching staff in terms of especially like game day stuff. You have Ryan Day as one of the best play callers in college football. You have Jim Knowles, who honestly, Jim Knowles is probably going to end up winning the Broyles Award this year for what he's done with this Ohio State defense. Um, he's shown that he's able to be versatile, and he's really just let these guys go out there and play. Honestly, he's like, look, I'm not going to scheme you out of a play. I'm going to let you go out there and make a play with your athleticism and your abilities. And I think that that's been huge for this team this year because now you got freak athletes on the field that are just out there doing what freak athletes do. And Jim Knowles is not taking some of your best athletes and like your safeties and trying to blitz them just to make them throw it quick. Obviously they blitz sometimes, but just again, I can't say enough good things about what Jim Knowles has done with this defense this year. We're going to talk about the defense tomorrow. I got to go. I don't have a ton of time today. We're going to talk about position by position, which team is better, Ohio State or Michigan on defense. And honestly, I think that one is going to be the one where you're going to see maybe a lean towards Michigan when you go down position by position. So make sure you guys tune into that tomorrow at 10 a.m. I think if you haven't followed me on Twitter, check me out on there. It's a CFB_stop. The reason why I just brought that up, there's a possibility that I may end up having to change the time I do my show every day. So, I'll put that out on there. Just give me a follow. Obviously, hit the like button on the video if you guys enjoy it, and come back for more content daily. But yeah, like I said, I do got to wrap it up here. Final say, Ohio State's offense is better than Michigan and will be better in this game because Ohio State has stars and big playmakers, and I don't think that Michigan necessarily has that over there. They just have a fundamentally sound offense, but in big games, stars make plays, and I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm going to wrap that up. You guys have a great day. Peace out, guys.